a tob must be a head covering that fits snugly on a person's head and around his or her face. I couldn't sleep that night, for the air seemed heavy, so I sat outside. The moon cast great pools of darkness across the flat landscape. I was thinking about my stubborn grandmother, when, silent as a shadow, she sat down beside me. I gazed upon our family's only baobab and let my eyes wander up the tree to the scrawny branches. Each branch looked small and separate in the light of the moon. As if she read my mind, grandmother said softly, "She gives us shade in the day, shelter in the rain, and water in the dry season. She is the tree of life." "No, grandmother. The baobab will give us shade in the day and shelter in the rain, kalas, and the pump will give us water in the dry season." Shaking her head, she said, "Good night, granddaughter," and she walked back to her hut. I rose that next day with the first rays of the sun when the air was still cool. Dressing quickly, I rushed to the well to pump away all the questions that my old-fashioned grandmother stirred in me. I was first, and I pumped till my shoulders ached. "Creak, creak," sang the pump. Nagla, the neighbor, who was always had something to say, called out, "Fatima is pumping like a woodpecker hammering a tree, and she fills your buckets before it's settled on the ground." A long line of girls with brimming buckets and tins, head pans and gourds balanced on their head, streamed back and forth between the huts and the pump. Now, why does Fatima's grandmother call the baobab tree the tree of life? Why does Fatima's grandmother call the baobab tree the tree of life? Well, the baobab tree has many uses. It provides shade and shelter, but most importantly, the tree can provide water. Since water is necessary for life, grandmother calls the baobab tree the tree of life. Now the hut was empty when I returned. I looked toward our field to find grandmother, and instead I saw her bent over her hoe at the base of the baobab tree. I ran to her and shouted, "Grandmother, people will laugh at you preparing your treat." I wanted to take the hoe from her hands, but she stood straight and said to me in a voice as hard as the dry earth, "Some may laugh. What do I care? I have to work." She worked in silence, for as the sun rose, the heat was great. "Creak, creak," sang the pump. "Heck, heck," went my grandmother's hoe. Working alone, she looked as thin as one of the tree's skinny branches. Let's stop right there. What does Fatima compare her grandmother to as she worked beneath the baobab tree? Fatima says her grandmother working alone looks like as thin as one of the skinny branches, and grandmother and the tree are both old and thin, and they represent the old way of doing things in the village. "Can I help?" I asked. "No," she said. She wiped the sweat dripping from her brow. One day Ahmed the barber passed the tree and shouted and laughed. For some people, new ideas are like puddles in clay. They never will sink in. Baljees, the midwife, called out, "To fight progress is to fight the wind, old woman. Come, let's go to the pump." But grandmother kept right on working. Her back bent over the hoe. She was slowly digging out what looked like a large necklace around the base of the baobab tree. Another day, Nagla, the neighbor, who never stops talking, passed. With a voice louder than the call to prayer, she said, "Who but a fool makes extra work? Myself, I used the well." Then she laughed, and I realized she was laughing at my grandmother. Old-fashioned or not, my grandmother. I nearly knocked Nagla down as I grabbed my hoe and ran to the tree. Without a word, I started digging beside my grandmother. We worked side by side. What do you think grandmother is digging around the base of the baobab tree? What do you think she's digging? Well, I think she's probably digging a ditch to catch the rainwater when it begins to rain. But let's continue to read and see. Now for days we dug, depending on the circle around the trunk. We didn't talk, and in peaceful silence we shared the work of my grandmother's great-grandmother. People passed us, but now no one said a word. They still looked at us from the sides of their faces, balancing buckets and headpans, pots and gourds full of water on their head, and we worked on. Creak, creak went the blue pump, and one day as the sun dipped below the earth's edge, Grandmother put away her hoe. Now, she said, we must wait for the rains. The first rains comes as fiercely as the first winds of the baobab. Grandmother and I stood in it. Feeling the water dripping down on our faces, we watched our necklace around the giant old tree's trunk slowly fill with water. The parched earth turned a shiny red as the giant raindrops plopped upon it. When the rain stopped, I climbed the tree and sat by a small hole at the top of the trunk, the hole that had been made by my grandmother's great-grandmother. So let's stop right there. Now, words have literal meanings or denotations. A word may also have a certain feeling or emotion associated with it, and that's a connotation. Now, a connotation may be positive or negative. What does the word parched mean? Well, parched means very dry. So parched has a more negative connotation than the word dry. It means uncomfortably dry. What other words have connotations similar to this word parched that we've read in the story? Words such as scorched, withered, burned, shriveled, or dehydrated are just a few. Now, I dropped the bucket tied to my waist down to my grandmother, who filled it to the brim from the baobab necklace. Slowly, I pulled the bucket back up and then poured its contents into the tree. It took 2 breaths before we heard the splash of water hitting the bottom. Deep inside the tree, Grandmother's eyes sparkled at the old, familiar sound. Aham, the barber passed by and shaking his head in wonder said, I guess some people like extra work, but we took no notice to him, and as the sweet splash of water rose higher and higher inside the old tree. Day after day now I climbed the tree, and Grandmother filled the bucket. We worked together, filling our tree. Finally, when the rains ended, the tree was full. The scorching dry season came early. Each day the horizon danced where the shimmering blue sky met the earth's baking red clay. Lines formed in the well, and the girls in their colorful taubes looked like a python stretched across the desert floor, sunning itself. And as the temperature rose, people made more trips to the well. From the first rays of light till the sky glowed hot, red, and dusty, as the sun slipped away, people pumped. The steady creak, creak sound of screech, screech as people pumped water from the sun up to sundown. And then, one day, the pump stopped. What do you think is going to happen next? The pump stopped. What are they going to do for water? Well, I'm thinking maybe the villagers are going to ask Fatima's grandmother for water, even though she made more work than it was worth, according to them. We will fix it, said the chief, Abrai. Omar the baker and Musa the butcher brought all the tools needed to fix the pump off the well. People stood in silence waiting for the news. Musa pulled a large metal piece, sharp along one edge, from the pump's neck. It had broken clean from too much use. Malash, he said to the quiet crowd. I don't know what we shall do, for I have no spare part like this. The men passed the broken metal rod from hand to hand in silence, each examining its sharp edge. I will make another piece, said the cart builder, but it will take some days. How can we wait days, said Nagla. What shall we do without water? We go back to the old ways. We shall use the camels to pull the water out of the well, just like in the days past. And then he looked straight at Grandmother and told Nagla, and 2 smart villagers can use their tree. This year we will share our tree, said Grandmother. Maybe it's wise to mix old and new. We shall see. Ahmed looked at her for a moment, then nodded his head and yes. He turned to the 2 men and said, Get the camels and the rope. His son Abu Bakr called to his friend Ali, Salah, and Assam. Get the buckets. We'll go to the tree. Now, why do you think Grandmother is willing to share her tree with the others in the village? Why do you think she's so willing to share that tree? Well, The fact that grandmother enjoyed the times when people worked together to prepare the tree, she may hope that the people in her village will see that it is still wise to prepare the trees just in case something should happen to the pump. Also, grandmother may appreciate that Ahmad said that she was smart to prepare her own tree for the dry season. Now, with great pride, I said yes to my great-grandmother's gourd, and before the next rainy season came, the village throbbed with the beating of drums and the chants of singing voices. The people worked together preparing the trees for the rain, just in case the pump broke again. I looked at grandmother, whose smile shone brightly, then the African sun, and said, "Remember last year?" The silence and the laughter as we worked alone. "Yes," she said, "but that was then, and this is now." And each day I pat the old baobab trunk and say, "Shukran, my friend, for you give us shade in the day, shelter in the rain, and water in the dry season. One day you will be my great-granddaughter's gourd." Now, let's think about this. We never filled in our similarities. Is there a similarity to the old ways and the new ways? What do you think should go here, guys? Villagers need water. So the similarity is going to be completely the same, but just realize that the villagers do not work together, no singing, just the creaking of the pump. But in the old days, villagers worked together to prepare the trees, and drum beats and singing filled the air as the villagers worked together. With that being said, I have just a couple more questions for you. Compare and contrast how Fatima felt about the old ways at the beginning of the story to the way she feels about them now. And how do you think her feelings impacted the plot? Well, in the beginning, Fatima believed that the pump replaced the need to depend on the trees for water, and at the end of the story, Fatima understands why preparing the baobab tree is important and says that she will teach the old ways to her children. So it's generationally it's being a tradition each year. And what message do you think the author wants to get across in this story? What do you think the message is, or the theme the author wants to try to get across? Well, I think the idea that although progress is good, it is not always wise to rely on just one method. Tradition should be respected, and sometimes a mix of old and new is the best. Okay, that goes ahead and concludes this link. Of course, if you have further questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to contact me.